and first of all, thank you to the President, CEO, other members of the Sri Lankan Cricket Board for giving me this very exciting opportunity to come in and make a real difference to Sri Lankan cricket going forwards. My 23 years at Kent, both as a player and as a coach, I've seen some fantastic things, working with some international greats like Mattaya Muratharan, Lasith Malinga, both came and played for us. And that has given me the appetite to come to Sri Lanka because I know the passion that everybody has for their national team and wanting it to be successful. So for me, this new role as high performance manager, from my perspective, is one of the most important roles in Sri Lankan cricket, because without it, you might not have players in the future. I'm hoping from my experience that I can help and play a small part with the other coaches to make sure we identify, develop and prepare those players for international cricket. Just to support this, I'm just going to give you a few slides just to give you my thoughts. So for me, it's about Sri Lanka cricket working together, because from my understanding there's been a small disconnect maybe from between the national team and what goes on underneath. I see myself as the glue that links those two things together, and the departments that will come in my area will make sure that we produce a player pathway that is seamless to the national team. Graham Ford, obviously head coach of the Sri Lankan cricket team, will tell us his needs, as well as Angelo, who's the present captain, and us as a team below will be trying to identify players, develop players in certain ways and provide them with opportunities overseas or in this country to develop them into those international players that the national team requires. So therefore, the purpose of a player pathway for me has two things. First thing is to provide an oversupply. We need more players than just one or two. We need to create competition. We want players banging down the door to get into that national team, both men's and women's. But they've got to be capable of winning matches on a consistent basis, not just once every 2 or 3 years. It's all about consistency. And if you look at the greats in the game, and obviously two of the greats recently finished here in Sangakkara and Mahalia, they were capable of winning matches in all formats consistently, and that's the challenge we've got in our player pathway. Also, we've got to work together to develop those great players by bridging the gap to international cricket. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that when players get picked, it doesn't take them 2 or 3 years to get established at international level. That everything that we do underneath, whether that's A-team, under-23s, under-19s, whatever that is, that's preparing them for a very easy transition into that international environment. Now that might not be just cricket skills, it might be travelling overseas. People might struggle being away from home for long periods of time. We need to prepare them for that. It might be playing in different conditions like we've seen in England recently with the swinging ball. Okay, we have to expose our players earlier to those experiences, and hopefully that will allow that transition to be a lot quicker. So the question I'll be having on numerous occasions to people out there is, how do we together better identify, develop and prepare our players for international cricket? That will be the question to the coaches, to the clubs, to the schools, to anybody in the system, all our stakeholders. I'll be looking to get their input into that. That process as early as possible. We need to formalise recruitment and retention strategies to ensure we get the selection process right, that we don't have large number of players that only play once or twice for Sri Lanka. What is it that we're looking for? What does good look like for a Sri Lankan legend? It's skills, yes, but also it's character. When the going gets tough, are they going to come through? We need to expose players to environments where they can be assessed. So that's different environments, spinning wickets, might be bouncy wickets, might be hot, might be cold. we've got to find those environments as early as possible and expose our players to it. We've got to create bumps in the road. For me, players have to make mistakes to improve. They have to experience failure at a young age, okay? Because the pathway to success isn't a straight line. And if it is, as a schoolboy cricketer who's dominated all the way through and then they fail at international level, then we haven't done our job well enough as coaches. Okay, so we need to create those bumps in the road along their development pathway. For me, it's really important that all Sri Lankan coaches are seen out and about on the ground, whether that be provincial games, whether it be club games. We need to be out there watching players and communicating with coaches further down the chain. Okay, it's all part of an education process, and it's a two-way process, not just top-down. We need to learn from those people who are specialising down at grassroots level, because we can learn lessons along the way. In the world, we need to see players over a number of years in a number of different environments, in different formats of the game, and then you can build a much bigger picture on where that player is going. For me, then we can develop a central database, and from that database we can look at trends. It might be that players only play white ball cricket and not red ball cricket. Why is that would be a question. It might be that guys are better playing at home than away. But all this central database will give us the facts rather than just opinions, and therefore with the facts we can make better informed decisions going forwards. And ultimately for me, it's about succession planning. We should never get to a period of the game where we don't know who our next best batsmen are, bowlers, wicket keepers. That's the challenge we've got. We should be planning 2 or 3 years ahead, seeing the potential retirements of players or the potential gaps in our national team, and working really hard to fill those gaps as a natural process, not just as a reaction. All-rounders, guys that can give the national team more depth, particularly from a batting point of view. If we can go out onto the field with more multi-skilled players, then we've got better chances of beating an opposition. We also want highly skilled players. Okay, so let's not forget your Muralitharans are world class. So we want those, but if we haven't got world class, then we need multi-skilled players to international level. We need clear information coming down from the national coaches, that's the head coach, but also the specialist coaches, the strength and conditioning coaches and physiotherapists. We need that information coming down so that we can work with players further down the system, or put processes in place that allow players to get back into that national team as soon as possible. The whole thing about the game of cricket is it's a team game played by individuals, and that's the important thing, that we really focus on players as individuals when it comes to their development. So some guys might need a lot of work, some guys might not need a lot. It's down to us as coaches to identify the players' needs and make sure we're putting things in place for them. And ultimately, Ashley's already talked about a huge amount of resource going into coaching, and that's my first job as I come in is to look at the coaching all the way through the system, to review what's going on, who's working where, even going down into the district and provincials. So that'll be the first job that I have over the next few weeks, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Biopsychosocial support, this is really crucial for me, particularly with younger players, is for them to understand the standards that are required to play international cricket from a physical, mental and lifestyle perspective. People always look at the skills, and yes, that will always come top of the tree, but if you haven't got those things underpinning it, then your skills will go under pressure and crumble during those lean periods. Overseas experiences and looking at other sports, for me that's just environment-based stuff. The broader the base of environments for our players, the better chance they've got in the long term. And finally, preparing players, preparing teams. For me, A tours are huge, and I've been lucky to find out today that I think there are 9 A-team tours organised over the next 3 years, and for me that's including tough cricket abroad. For me, you know, from my English experience, coming to Asia, playing in Sri Lanka and India and Pakistan was always a massive challenge for England. I think now that has become a little bit more comfortable for various reasons, and I think the more tours we can get abroad for our young players, those transitions will become a lot easier. We need a competitive programme of matches which challenge our players. You can only do so much in an indoor school or in the nets. For me, you find out about players in matches, particularly under pressure. So for me, we need to produce as many good match and practice facilities for our players to learn their trade, because otherwise, if we're producing poor pitches, then you're going to get a poor standard of player, because at international level, the pitches are flat, very flat. There's not much going on, so you have to be able to do something with the ball as a bowler, and as a batsman you have to have a sound technique. So for me, the pitches are really, really crucial. We need to have joined up thinking on player development. We need to make sure people don't specialise too early, and we need to investigate ways of utilising the expertise, knowledge and motivational skills of past and present players. For me, they're the standout people. We need to get the legends of the game. We need to ask them questions about what they did in their development, what was it that made them successful, and we need to pass that knowledge on to our players coming through the system. Okay, so people have asked me what high performance is, and this for me is quite a simple model for you to understand. For me, it starts with self-awareness and team awareness. For me, you need to understand yourself, you need to understand your strengths and weaknesses, and you need to understand those of your teammates as well. We're not all the same, we all walk differently, we all talk differently, so why can't we play cricket differently? There are the non-negotiables, but for me, understanding yourself and what you do when you play at your best is crucial. Then we need to accept the challenge. Okay, we don't just plod along, we keep challenging ourselves and looking for new opportunities. We then got to commit to it 100%. Without commitment, you don't get excellence, and that's what we're about. We're a high performing unit. We want players to be at the top of their game. There needs to be some trust and belief. For me, there needs to be trust and rapport between coaches, players and administrators, and from that, belief will start to come. Okay, so for me, the biggest part of my job going forwards is building that trust element with the coaches, with the staff, with the players. And if we can do that, and we have a common goal, then anything could be possible. Then finally, for me, we need to consistently monitor and measure what we do. Okay, so month on month, year on year, whatever it is, we've got to have a monitoring process in place to make sure players, coaches are moving forwards on a consistent basis. And then hopefully for me, we achieve our team goals and objectives in the long term. Thank you. I've been at Kent for 23 years, but I've also done a hell of a lot of work for the ECB as well. I've been part of the Level 4 programme. I was on the second intake of that. I was the youngest Level 4 coach in the world at 29. So I started early, and I've always had a real passion for the game. I've been lucky enough to work in the English system, heading up the Level 4 wicket-keeping module with Steve Rhodes and previously Paul Farbrace, who was head coach here for a while. And throughout that time, been involved in various initiatives. But also working along some really good people. For me, that's what it's all about. You can have structures, but it's only as good as the people you've got involved. And for me, that'll be the number one priority, is finding people who are passionate about what they do, fully committed, and willing to do whatever it takes to improve things. I think the first thing that attracted me was the passion for the game. I've always been interested in how Sri Lankan cricket has produced those unorthodox players, yet the technical book says you shouldn't do it that way. So spending time with Murali at Kent was always amazing. And then lucky enough to have Lasith Malinga come after that as well, two of the most probably unorthodox bowlers to be the most successful in the game. So that was a massive attraction. To come to work again with someone like Graham Ford, who I worked with for 5 years at Kent, was a huge attraction. Graham's someone I have a huge amount of respect for. He's been a big mentor for me back at Kent, and then from there I just thought it was a really good time to get involved with Sri Lanka cricket. You know, it's a blank sheet of paper. When I spoke to the board, I was really enthused by what they had to say, was very excited by the vision that they had for the game in this country, and for them for putting their hands up and identifying a need. They could have easily have just carried on, but they were big enough to say no, we need to sort this out for the long-term good of Sri Lanka cricket. So for me that was a massive draw.
Foremost issue you have identified in terms of Sri Lanka not producing enough players for the national unit, like you said, we need competition for individual places. So during this short discussion, what have you realized in terms of the issue of Sri Lanka right now?
Oh, look, the depth of quality is probably the biggest challenge at the moment. We need more bench players. You know, so when you get injuries on tour, you've got high standard quality coming in to replace those people. The answer to your question, I don't know at the moment, is being honest. I need to sit down with the experience around the table and try and find out. That's all part of my process to come up with maybe some recommendations in the future. But all I can say is we'll be working 24/7 to get that right.
And a point you mentioned on your slides about coaches being present at the grounds. But don't you think the selectors have a bigger role in terms of selecting? Because in terms of coaches, they are given a set of players. For example, we haven't seen the under-19 squad, junior squad who are going to travel to England. So would you not see selectors as a bigger role in terms of going for first-class matches and selecting a pool of players rather than the coaches themselves being present there?
Yeah, I just see it from a coach's perspective. Players have relationships with coaches on a day-to-day basis, and the more that players see coaches around, the more they're going to trust the coach. Okay, rather than just when he's in a national team and he's dropped me, he doesn't rate me. So for me, it's about those relationships from a coaching point of view. The more a player can trust the coach, the better chance you've got of getting that player to play to his maximum potential. When it comes to national selectors, they've got their jobs to do, and it's not for me to tell them how to do that. You know, it's a new group of selectors at the moment, and I'm sure they're trying to get around to do as much as they can because it's a big job. But until I sit down with Sana and the other selectors, we'll just have to wait and see how that evolves.
Just one final question. You said it's a 3-year project, so 2019 we are looking at the World Cup in England. So would you promise us a couple of superstars going to the 2019 World Cup?
Look, that's the challenge, isn't it? And that's a really exciting challenge for me. And that was why the contract was set up the way it was. You know, for me to go to England with a team competing for that World Cup, for me will be very exciting, and to have 2 or 3 players that all these guys have worked with or brought through the system in that time will be a tick in the box for me.
Yes. Thank you once again. Have a good evening.